special moments in our national pastime are brought to you by the official airline of Major League Baseball, United. Come fly the friendly skies.
When you look for champions, you look to CBS Sports.
This is CBS.
Hi, I'm Terry Krantz from Terry Krantz Crossroads and Ford Dodge. Why buy your old inventory when you can get great prices on brand new 92s like these?
That's right, Terry. We have a wide selection of 1992 Chevy Cavaliers starting as low as $89.92 cash or $55 down and $199 a month. At Terry Krantz Crossroads, folks, we service what we sell. Fast, courteous, and dependable service. Your satisfaction is our #1 goal.
Stop by Terry Krantz Crossroads and Fort Dodge or call their hotline at 1-800-433-IOWA today.
Who wants to plan our holiday party?
Not me.
I did it last
Remember
year.
Buffy's tap dance?
I'll do it.
We want dinner, great entertainment, and cocktails all in one place.
An Ingersoll party is the way to go. They got dinner, drinks, and a show, you know. No hassle, no fret. One call's a sure bet. Do the ticket for more than you bargained for. So forget your worries. The party's on me. I can't go wrong at the IDT.
We didn't know you had it in you.
Oh, it comes and it goes.
The Ingersoll Dinner Theater. We do the work, you have the fun.
Jeff Johnson and TV8, where news is #1.
An explosive new turn in the confirmation hearings for Judge Clarence Thomas. The nominee charges he is the victim of racist stereotyping.
And these are charges that play into racist, bigoted stereotypes. And these are the kind of charges that are impossible to wash off.
This is the CBS Evening News. Bob Schieffer reporting. Good evening. Clarence Thomas went on the attack today, accusing his critics of using blatant racism to keep him off the Supreme Court, but he said he had rather die than withdraw. The dramatic testimony came during a grueling and emotion-charged Saturday session of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which Thomas said at one point was the most difficult ordeal of his life.
If someone wanted to block me because they felt I wasn't qualified, that's fine. If someone wanted to block me because they don't like the composition of the court, that's fine. Senator, I would have preferred an assassin's bullet to this kind of living hell that they have put me and my family through.
Again and again, Thomas argued the real issue was race, not sexual harassment.
In this country, when it comes to sexual conduct, we still have underlying racial attitudes about black men and their views of sex. And once you pin that on me, I can't get it off. That is why I am so adamant in this committee about what has been done to me. This is high-tech lynching. I cannot shake off these accusations because they play to the worst stereotypes we have about black men in this country.
Thomas's accuser, Anita Hill, was not present today, but it was her accusations of yesterday that hung heavily over the room.
He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or large breasts involved in various sex acts. On several occasions, Thomas told me graphically of his own sexual prowess.
It was a shocking allegation, and Thomas's supporters were having none of it.
That person, it seems to me, would not be a normal person. That person, it seems to me, would be a psychopathic sex fiend or a pervert.
Then, in a direct attack on Professor Hill's credibility, Hatch suggested a work of fiction may have inspired this bizarre allegation.
He got up from the table at which we were working, went over to his desk to get the Coke, looked at the can and asked, "Who has put pubic hair on my Coke?"
What was curious, Hatch said, was that a similar incident was described in The Exorcist. Hatch also noted that a porno movie star Hill claims Thomas once discussed with her figured in a sexual harassment suit. He read from that case.
Plaintiff further testified that on one occasion, defendant Brand presented her with a picture of Long Dong Silver. That's the public opinion that's available in any law library.
To Hatch, it was citizen lobby groups opposed to Thomas who had encouraged Professor Hill to attack the judge.
And there's a lot of slick lawyers in those groups. Slick lawyers. The worst kind. And it may have been a great one that found the reference to Long Dong Silver, which I find totally offensive.
By late afternoon, Specter of Pennsylvania leveled the toughest charge of all at Thomas's accuser.
Because it is my legal judgment, having had some experience in perjury prosecutions, that the testimony of Professor Hill in the morning was flat-out perjury.
It is clear the lengthy hearings have been wearing on Thomas, but he said he is determined to see it through.
I'd rather die than withdraw. If they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
He simply could not quit, he finally said, and remained true to what his grandfather had taught him.
He told me to stand up for what I believe in. He had another statement. Give out, but don't give up. That's what he'd say to me.
Without question, Thomas's testimony today introduces a new element into the debate over his nomination. Our law correspondent Rita Braver now with more on that.
Clarence Thomas clearly got the committee's full attention when he charged that Anita Hill's claims that he bragged about his sexual prowess were not only a personal, but also a cultural insult.
I feel as though I've been abused in this process. This is something that not only supports, but plays into the worst stereotypes about black men in this society.
But Thomas' opponents quickly cried foul.
This is the case of a very credible, respectable, conservative, religious, black law professor raising these allegations. And I think to suggest that she is doing it in a way to feed into those stereotypes to the detriment of the community is a dangerous strategy.
And Hill's attorney argued that by raising the issue of race, Thomas intimidated white senators.
It's clear that that point has had a very sobering effect on the members of this committee. Their roles in response have changed in the last 12 hours.
And there is no doubt that something has changed. Yesterday, senators were praising Hill for her courage in coming forward. Today, much of the talk centered on inconsistencies in her statements.
I'm saying that flat out. I think that her credibility has been demolished.
She has said, I am willing to submit to a polygraph. I want to see what the committee decides to do about that, whether they think that both parties should be willing to do that. If they have a credibility gap, let's get to the heart of it. Let's fish or cut bait.
The committee, however, is considered unlikely to call for lie detector tests, and some key members of the full Senate, like Alan Dixon of Illinois, are still undecided.
Each of us has to make their own judgment now, predicated on what develops in these hearings. And so I'm carefully listening to everything that happens.
Well, the committee has just adjourned for the day, finally. Clarence Thomas is finished for the time being, but he could be called back. Anita Hill could be called back. But first, the committee will hear from supporters of each of their stories. Tension is very high here. Tempers are flaring. And as they say, Bob, we are in for a bumpy ride.
Is there any, why would not they allow Ms. Hill to take a lie detector test, Rita?
Well, what most people are saying is that, as you know, and civil libertarians are the first ones to say this, that lie detector tests are not necessarily conclusive, and so you get back into who's right and who's wrong again.
All right, Rita Braver. Thank you, Rita. Clarence Thomas's testimony drew rave reviews from one audience, the audience at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Susan Spencer is there with that. Susan?
Bob, that main audience, actually, President Bush is at Camp David tonight. We're told that he watched the hearings on and off all day. And late this afternoon, his spokesman, Marlon Fitzwater, did have a very glowing assessment. It read in part, Judge Thomas has once again demonstrated the qualities of determination, sensitivity, and leadership that made him an outstanding nominee to the Supreme Court. When asked, though, about the whole issue of race and Judge Thomas's repeated assertions that these hearings are racially motivated, one senior official said to me, well, the Senate committee is white. Judge Thomas is black. You know what he's been through. How can you question why he might see this in racial terms? But as to the larger question, as to whether or not the White House has played a role in any kind of calculated move to be sure that race does emerge as an issue here, to that you get an emphatic denial. This official saying in addendum that Judge Thomas today was simply speaking from the heart. Bob?
And is there any vote count there tonight, Susan?
I think there are probably hundreds of vote counts here. There's no consensus at all either way. There's certainly no consensus that this is in the bag. What had the most encouraged today, though, was the fact that these hearings completely shifted focus. This wasn't hour after hour after hour of Anita Hill, again, graphically describing all of these alleged acts. Instead, it was hour after hour of sometimes very tedious testimony having to do with FBI reports, etc. That doesn't hurt Clarence Thomas. That hurts the committee, and that is just fine with the White House. I think when this is over, you're going to see George Bush make an enormous political issue out of how this committee bungled these hearings. Bob?
All right. Thank you, Susan. Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, Americans react to the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings in places other than Washington, and the world of show business remembers Red Fox.
Proven to be the king.
Ford Motor Company profiles in quality, employee involvement.
If they're working together, you'll do a better job. I said that back in '82, and the quality of our cars and trucks is proof that it's working today.
Money alone won't build quality cars. You've got to have better designs.
Better designs don't mean a thing unless engineering can live up to the designs.
Engineering works only when everyone is committed to quality.
Our goal is to build the highest quality cars and trucks in the world.
At Ford, quality is job one.
I want to ask you about something.
Okay. Okay.
I'm crazy about you.
Well, I'm crazy about you, too. That's it?
Oh.
What? What? Come on, what?
To survive in today's world, you have to follow certain basics. You have to work, and you have to eat. And both play havoc with your stomach. That's why I take Malox. Malox is the strongest antacid there is. It works fast to stop the burning and churning in no time. And who knows more about stomach problems than Malox? You know, it's a funny thing. I started taking Malox because the doctor told me it was strongest. I keep on taking it because my stomach tells me it's fast.
The Senate testimony of Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas has made sexual harassment the #1 topic of discussion at offices, in coffee shops, and on college campuses. For some young women, the case has provided a crash course in life beyond law school. Bob Fall now with more on that.
Sexual harassment is not about sex. It is about power.
Today at a New York City rally against sexual harassment, it was clear that the recent hearings have triggered another round in the war between the sexes.
But we won't stand here and be insulted.
This country is a genocide, and what's a man?
It's a curse. You don't belong.
And at the Yale Law School, where Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill graduated, and where today other graduates returned for homecoming, some first-year female students were also troubled, not just by the charges leveled, but by the Senate Judiciary Committee.
These are all white men, and I think the reason they didn't bring it forth in the first place, even though they had the information from the FBI report, is because I feel that they probably didn't think it was that big a deal. And
They are worried, they said, that the grilling Anita Hill received might discourage others who feel victimized from coming forward.
what would happen if someone who wasn't nearly as articulate as her came up with a sexual harassment complaint? I mean, that's very frightening.
In the end, I think it may be even more damaging for women, for them to see what happens when you come forward with a complaint of sexual harassment. Why would anyone ever want to go through that?
Is the Senate Judiciary Committee really learning something about sexual harassment from this? I'm not sure that they are at all.
The major question is whether or not they're really listening, and I don't think they're listening.
Right.
Here, then, the hearings have not raised hopes, but have confirmed some deep anxiety.
As a first-year law student,
I'm really discouraged about the world that I'm going to face when I get out of here. If this happens in government jobs, at the EOC, for Christ's sakes, I mean, what's going to happen in private firms? What happens behind the scenes?
And what message is sent, they are asked, if Clarence Thomas is confirmed?
It sends out a very strong message that sexual harassment is taken very lightly in the society, and nobody really wants to listen to anything about it, and it'll keep going on until someone really does listen.
From the campus, then, which helped catapult both Thomas and Hill to prominence, the sentiment grows that the confrontation which hurt them might hurt women as well. Bob Fall, CBS News, New Haven, Connecticut.
For the people of Clarence Thomas's hometown in rural Georgia, the hearings have been especially painful. Aaron Hayes now with that report.
It was a beautiful afternoon in the community of Pinpoint, Georgia, but most people stayed inside, keeping an eye on the storm that's enveloped Clarence Thomas.
Enough is enough. Too much is too much.
Rebecca Bowens and her Pinpoint neighbors have watched 2 days of testimony and are angry about what's happening to a man many have known from his boyhood.
They need to give that man his job and let that man go ahead and do what he's ready to do for our work.
Most here do not believe Anita Hill's testimony about Judge Thomas.
I don't think he's that kind of person. I really do believe that Clarence is telling the truth when he said he didn't say those things. I believe it. Man.
What about those things?
Oh, man.
What's more, some of the young men watching agree with Thomas's charge that Anita Hill's testimony stereotypes black men as promiscuous.
We always have this in our life.
Lens will leave an indelible mark on me.
You see this man keep hammering at everything sex this, sex that.
For those in this tiny neighborhood who watched Thomas grow up, know his family, this is a difficult time. John Henry Haynes has known Clarence Thomas since he was a toddler.
Everybody pulling for him. Yeah, everybody pulling for him.
If God's on your side, nobody can bring you down. So, I really feel for him.
Late yesterday, a gesture from Pinpoint, printing T-shirts for the Supreme Court nominee, as much as they can do right now to help their native son. They're planning a parade here Sunday, speeches and a rally, to show Clarence Thomas they believe him. They're behind him, no matter what happens in Washington. Aaron Hayes, CBS News, Pinpoint, Georgia.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit Conoco would pioneer the use of new double-hulled oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. DuPont, better things for better living.
I'm alive, Jeff Hashimoto.
I'm alive, Vonda Williamson.
I'm alive, Sonia Schofield.
I'm alive, Howard Weber.
Want to get more out of life?
I'm alive, Jessica Weber.
Get airbags. See your Allstate agent for a list of cars with airbags.
We're alive.
Ooh, honey, don't come near me, please.
Oh, I can't. No, it's not a good idea.
Oh, no, baby, not right now.
Oh, sweetie. You don't want to get too close.
Fight morning breath with Scope. Scope has 2 powerful ingredients to kill 90% of the bacteria that cause morning breath.
Kiss me.
What are you waiting for?
Great kiss.
You may kiss me now.
Scope, the best thing first thing in the morning.
I'm Charles Carroll. Circa 1492, the greatest art of its time, the time of Columbus. Join us for that story this Sunday morning.
The public ordeals of Judge Thomas and Professor Hill are providing and provoking some very profound questions about the way the Senate does business. Bruce Morton has a commentary.
Just argued we should quit the investigation.
The Army-McCarthy hearings were drama with an ending. A senator who specialized in smearing others would eventually self-destruct. Watergate had an ending. The Congress was willing to impeach a president for the first time in 100 years. One of the frustrating things about the Thomas hearings is that we probably won't have a clear ending, won't know whether he or she is lying. What we do know is that the Senate looks very bad. Professor Hill's sexual harassment charges triggered strong emotions, especially among women who saw the Senate as a male club which didn't understand or care about the issue. Judge Thomas triggered strong race-based emotions when he compared the hearing to a lynching, with the senators presumably as the lynch mob. What should they have done? The charges are serious. If they're true, Judge Thomas ought not to become Justice Thomas. But if they're not true, his name has been smeared on national television, perhaps beyond repair. The charges did need to be investigated, but not investigated on TV. The Senate needs to think about some new approaches to its confirmation process, in which a lot of the work gets done in private before public hearings begin. That didn't happen this time, first because Professor Hill had hoped to avoid going public, second because her FBI statement was leaked to reporters. The result is a mess. Hill and Thomas have had their lives changed forever, and the Senate looks like a collection of 100 losers. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is now scheduled to reconvene at noon tomorrow Eastern Time in order to hear character witnesses for both Judge Thomas and Professor Hill. CBS News will provide updates during the NFL football and the Major League playoffs. And when we come back, a new U.S. peace mission to the Middle East.
Woe to the business that falls in love with the status quo. For the same circumstances that leave you fat and satisfied can leave the competition very hungry. To fend them off, finance your capital requirements through Sanwa Business Credit Corporation. We help you get ahead. We help you stay ahead.
Once again, Buick is raising the banner for quality in America. Introducing the 1992 LeSabre with a higher level of power, safety, security, and convenience. This new LeSabre is going to be one tough act to follow. LeSabre for 1992 from Buick.
I saw my doctor because the pain was so bad. I was afraid I needed surgery for my hemorrhoids. I was itching. The burning was awful. But my doctor said my hemorrhoids weren't serious. I didn't need surgery. He told me it was time I started using Preparation H.
Preparation H helps shrink swelling of inflamed hemorrhoidal tissues and often brings relief from pain, itching, and burning for hours.
What a difference Preparation H makes.
Doctor recommended Preparation H.
With time running short, Secretary of State James Baker leaves tonight on his 8th Middle East peace mission since the Gulf War ended. He will visit Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Israel. The Bush administration determined to convene peace talks before the end of this month. The Iraqis, meanwhile, are up in arms over last night's Security Council vote giving UN weapons inspectors unprecedented authority inside Iraq. We have more on that tonight from Alan Pizzi in Baghdad.
Material specified in
The UN Security Council voted unanimously in favor of what has been called the most intrusive resolution ever imposed on a nation's sovereignty. It seeks to establish controls so stringent that Saddam Hussein will never again acquire weapons of mass destruction. The Iraqi reaction was swift and predictable. Iraq's UN ambassador Abdul al-Anbari accused the UN of what he called occupation of Iraq by remote control. UN teams are already in Iraq preparing to destroy what Iraq says was its main chemical weapons production and testing site, a 600-square-mile piece of desert northwest of Baghdad, jammed with tons of some of the most lethal chemical agents known to man. The latest resolution gives UN inspectors the right to fly and drive anywhere in Iraq, to enter any site, factory, or project that might be used for weapons production, to stop and search any truck, plane, or boat. It will be a crime for any Iraqi to buy or to help build weapons of mass destruction. Observers here predict that Iraqi compliance with the latest UN resolution will be grudging at best. The technicians involved know that cooperation is the only way to go, one source said. But that's not the way Saddam Hussein likes to do business, and he's still giving the orders around here. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Baghdad.
The investigation has begun into last night's accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Soviet Ukraine. Officials say that no one was hurt, no radiation was leaked in a fire that damaged the roof of a turbine room. The fire apparently was caused by an electrical malfunction.
It's a car born of intelligent engineering. It's 100,000 ideas fused into one. It's responsive, innovative, refined. It's a driver's side airbag and anti-lock brakes. Introducing the all-new 88 Royale LS. Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering.
So I'm in the grocery store, and this really good-looking guy smiles at me and says,
Hi.
Hi. Kellogg's Bran Flakes?
Oh, well, these aren't mine. My folks are visiting.
He didn't have to be embarrassed. I love Kellogg's Bran Flakes. They have this nutty, toasted wheat taste that is really great. Anyway, I grab a box of Kellogg's Bran Flakes and say, gee, that's too bad. I was going to compliment your good taste.
The toasted taste of Kellogg's Bran Flakes.
They're not what you expect.
My company came to me, and they suggested, strongly, not just suggested, that I seek assistance. I thought it was to fire me. And instead, they gave me an opportunity to save my life.
Evangelist Jimmy Swaggart apparently in trouble again. Police in Indio, California stopped him yesterday for driving on the wrong side of the road. In the car with him was a woman who's identified herself as a prostitute. He had stepped down from his ministry for a time in 1988 after meeting with a prostitute. On this Columbus Day weekend, historians and others are taking another look at the legacy of Christopher Columbus. In Washington, Native Americans held a memorial service for those who did not survive what they call the invasion of 1492. Friends and fellow comedians and fans are mourning the death of Red Fox today. The 68-year-old entertainer died last night after suffering a heart attack during a rehearsal for his new television show, The Royal Family. David Dow has more now on the raspy-voiced comic who made millions laugh.
To millions, Red Fox will always be the irascible junkman of Sanford and Son, the hit sitcom of the 70s.
But you do make a lovely couple. Tweedledee and Tweedledummy.
But over 5 decades in show business, Fox, born John Sanford, did it all. Vaudeville, records, movies, and randy nightclub routines. Comedy honed from real life and his own experience growing up poor in St. Louis.
You know them shoes they had called Keds? I wore mine till it said.
His work, he would say, doesn't drive home a lesson, but it shattered some of television's black stereotypes.
If it's not honest, it's not good for me because I'm honest all the way down.
Is this going to be one of those conversations about the facts of life?
Yes.
Will you tell me about the birds and the bees?
No, I want you to tell me about the birds and the bees. Because I ain't been stung in years.
Though he made millions from Sanford and Son, Fox in the 80s ran into financial problems and a battle with the IRS, which raided his Las Vegas home in a dispute over nearly $3 million in alleged back taxes. But this year brought a new wife, his 4th, and new life to his career.
Dexter and I are getting a divorce.
Yes!
It was the old Fox back in The Royal Family, a promising series about a retiring couple suddenly forced to take in their daughter's family. 3 more episodes of Royal Family had already been recorded when Fox died last night. He was 68. David Dow, CBS News, Hollywood.
And recapping tonight's top story, Clarence Thomas today said he had rather die than withdraw his nomination to the Supreme Court in the face of Professor Anita Hill's sexual harassment charges. Beginning at noon Eastern Time tomorrow, the Senate Judiciary Committee will hear from character witnesses for both Thomas and Hill. The hearings are expected to last as long as it takes to wrap up the investigation. CBS News will provide updates during NFL football and the Major League Baseball playoffs. Well, that's the news. We'll see you again tomorrow on Face the Nation, where we'll discuss the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings with his chief sponsor, Senator John Danforth, and Judiciary Committee members Patrick Leahy and Arlen Specter. I'm Bob Schieffer, CBS News in New York. Good night.
Tell me, O wisest Swami, what's the answer?
Well, the Eagles have a most difficult defense, but the Saints are unbelievably undefeated. I wish I had a television.
This is CBS.
Coming up next on the TV8 News Live at 6, a number of highway accidents this weekend in central Iowa. One of them leaves 3 people dead. 5-year-old Des Moines girl seriously injured in another accident.
Judge Thomas faces more searing questions today. TV8's Martin Augustine with local reaction. And a relaxing day in Madison County. TV8's Jill Lingwall says the fun continues tomorrow.
Steve with another nice day tomorrow, and John Walters with a big last-minute touchdown for the Hawks. TV8 News is next.
For the most live coverage at noon, turn to TV8 News. This past week, Steve Carlin had local reaction to the Thomas confirmation hearings. This next week, Dr. Bob Arnott talks about men's health issues. We'll visit with the legendary musical group The Platters, learn about plans to build a facility for people with autism.